Hello and warm welcome to everyone for joining us tonight on Big Talk. A lot of concern about the politicking, and just from the words of the Secretary to the federal government regarding appealing to some North and the Northerners to give President Tinubu more support ahead of the 2027 presidential election. The former Vice President Atiku has responded to the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Akume, for saying that the North should wait until 2031 to contest the presidential election. While these have sparked a lot of concern, it's not just about the comments made by Atiku, but those are really having a concern about our governance, the present state of governance in the nation. Should we start having some conversation about 2027? Is it also sensitive enough looking at the current state of the economy? These are the pertinent questions, but tonight we'll be looking at that aspect and extracting some of these controversies. What led to the Secretary to the federal government to say this was due to his defense over the tax reform bills that looks at the North are rejecting it, and they are calling for more consultation to be made, so as to everyone to be on the same table for this agreement. And tonight I'm being joined by Zariu Yusuf. Is a public affairs analyst and a security expert. He just left on your program to extract this. Thanks so much, Yusuf, for being here on the show. A lot of concern about the state of the nation. I mean that those are really having a concern that, look, we must fix our institutions. We must fix the current state of the nation. Are you worried about all of that before we delve into what Atiku has said to Judge Akume?
Well, to be honest with you, I do not know how many things I could count that are functional in the country. I would only give Nigerians, kudos for being survivors, for their resilience, whether positively or negatively, because there should be a limit to which you tolerate certain things. But the focus primarily of any government is to make sure that what is out of place is brought back to order. But then it leaves us with the question of who got things out of place, and who do we look out to, or who do we look up to fix things, when primarily it looks as if the key policies of those running the state is basically what sets everything, in disarray. So we are not basically dealing with a group of people who came in to meet a messed up economy and they are trying to find ways of fixing it. They are the same people that have been in power for the decade. Basically, it's just a change of guard. Different political parties. Yes, it's just a change of guard. So it's less about the individual and more about whatever the platform, the party stands for, the principle it represents, and all of that. And that's why, to a large extent, you may find it doesn't really say, you hardly find so much of a disparity or difference in the manner in which policies are being implemented as far as the impact of them on the masses is concerned, whether the one that was passed or the one that currently is. So I think what should be is that we fix the economy. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like, it looks like the state of the economy is basically the mission, as far as I understand it. Yes.
When you look at the policies of this government, that those have failed, the president needed to take that decision to remove subsidy, which is still what has drawn a lot of, that those have said, inflation. We cannot really measure inflation right now without looking at what subsidy removal has really created. Government have tried on their best to manage the aftermath of the subsidy, but it looks that those are having a concern that the best is not best enough. In all of that effort, even if it was Atiku, that those have said, even if it was Peter Obi, even if it was any other Kwankwaso of NMPP and all of that, but the concern we're having in this nation that it's a global, it's a global concern. Inflation is generally in almost many nations of the world. US was speaking about economy when they were doing the elections. Ghana was recently speaking about economy when they were having the elections. So it looks that it's a global trend, that there are those that feel that even under anyone, the circumstances we find ourselves today, would have been the same, because there was a mismanagement for the past, and whosoever would have inherited this government or this current state of Nigeria would have had it difficult to addressing them. Do you subscribe to that?
It is a lie. It is not true.
If it's better
The
way.
so-called idea, however Africans were fed with the lie that you fix economies by removing subsidies, you save your currency, you help the people by removing currency, is basically a lie. I think I was maybe 200 or 300 level student when I did a small literature review. And in the course of my research, I discovered these advanced countries were the so-called economic experts that shove down the throat of African leaders all of these kinds of policies they implement. You get the idea. Nobody subsidizes as they do. Every aspect of the economy that directly impacts their masses are heavily subsidized. When you talk about agriculture, you talk about health and all of those things. Of course, there are classes. But then you can't sit down and create a scenario where the masses can hardly have access to anything. Let me give you an example. You came into a country where you would need 3 months' salary to get a bag of rice now, as it is. And a country where you can hardly pay rent, a country where things are just difficult. One of the things that impacts everybody, whether you're a car owner, or whether you are a hireling who drives on behalf of someone else, whether you are the passenger, you get the idea, is basically PMS. That is what affects everybody in the country. The little boy in nursery school, the old man that just stays at home and goes to the farm and returns, the young guy that is in the civil service or in the military or whatsoever. Overnight, the price was moved to, I think, 650, and then in a couple of weeks it went up, so now we pay about 1,200 naira for a liter. Now the argument is there is no country in the world that doesn't face this. It's a lie. Definitely countries face those things, but what Nigeria is in is a situation where ordinarily you find countries that suffer from heavy economic sanctions. What the current state of Nigeria's economy is supposed to be that of a country that suffers economic sanctions, and we are not under any. I don't know if you know what I'm saying. Say under Abacha, we had a whole lot of that, but this was not the case. Oh, definitely I know the value of the currency then, whether the naira or the dollar was different. But with all of the sanctions we had, things worked better. So it leaves the masses asking the mundane, cheap, common questions. I mean, we have crude oil, we have refineries, we have this, we have that. Why all of these things? And now we are trying to introduce something which I suspect as an individual is an attempt to phase out or maybe to get us into another cycle of slavery, which is this thing they call the CNG. You get the idea? They are trying to get you to welcome because it's cheaper. But will you go with how cheap it is and forget about what it could create much later, because it's something you would have to heavily rely on foreign supply for. So there is something that is not just right. So, but the idea that anybody that come in wouldn't have dealt with it differently is a lie. If somebody,
maybe there would have been another approach. Look, because these are the statistics that is said that, I mean, we do not even have more crude. I mean, to talk less of trying to make that concern about the fact that we are still a blessed nation with oil. Our economy, I mean, look at the debt crisis. We're borrowed so much that we are at the point where there is no way until we find lasting solutions to that, and that is the reason why they had to remove that subsidy.
It's a human issue. When I say it's a human problem, it simply means the right person in place would fix it. The right person in place will fix it. The man who reasons from the streets and from the trenches would fix it. But to every problem, there is a convenient way to approach it, especially for those it doesn't affect. When you find people telling you it's nothing, it's not exactly anything and all of that, it's simply because the economy or the state captors have created a scenario where the so-called elites are well insulated from this. If a liter sold for 5,000, there are still people who won't really feel it. That's just the bottom line. You get the idea? And they constitute less than 5% of Nigerians. And that's why it's easy to just throw out all of these things. I mean, you need, I think, 25% more than whatever minimum allowances people receive in states to fill the tank of a Corolla or 406 or any car whatsoever. You get there just to fill up the tank, and that's not that's strange, actually, for somebody to think that that's a way of fixing the economy. What are you doing with the excess of the money, and how did you get to continue paying the subsidy? So it's an old trick we saw in 2020, was it from 2015 to 2023, and it's the same advanced trick that we saw. So you say we've removed it, but then a couple of weeks later or months, you say no, actually it's not what we removed, we just did a little something to it. Why are we still paying? What are we paying the money for?
I mean,
it hasn't impacted us in any way positively. We haven't seen anything to just.
So they are not managing. Yes, the action have already been done. So those are having a concern about how they can manage all of this process, because Atiku said that Tinubu'S capacity and performance does not really show that he deserves another time. But in managing all of these challenges, what is your assessment? Commitment of government saying, give us some more time. We're doing our best to get these things done. Yes, things are hard, but this is what we have to do now to address the future challenges. All of those comments and concerns from government sometimes looks as if they are they have a clear picture that many Nigerians are not seeing towards that direction. What is your judgment of the management of all of these reforms and the policies?
Let me be honest with you. There is one thing to blame any African leader of very poor and unthought policies. Well, that would be fine. Would say he doesn't have foresight, he doesn't see things, he doesn't have a good team in place. And there is something else when you find foreign influences rolling out policies that do nothing other than fine-tune the economy of. If there was a 300th world, that would be where Nigeria and many African countries belong, not even the third world. Okay, so you fine-tune that economy to feed something. Whatever it is that is happening in Nigeria actually enriches certain people. Unfortunately, it's not us. And then the part of us it enriches are those few that are less than 5% or maybe 2% and all of that. So, like I said, it's not a government that has been saddled with a challenging situation to fix the economy. The mess we are in was carefully thought out by the government. So we can't be talking about managing anything. Let me try to approach it in a very simple way. I am a father in a house, and I say to this boy and this boy and this child, no more 3 square meals, okay? No more subscription for TV. No more data for phones. We need to save this money because we don't have as much income anymore. So what are we saving the money for? Well, you need to go back to school. Okay? And so he finds himself in a better school. What are we saving the money for? We need to have light so you get to read in the night. What are we saving the money for? You need computers to do your assignments. And then the boy discovers, okay, this and this and this that may have been needs, but they've been prioritized. But now we have better things to show for it. 3 months is more than enough for any government that takes any harsh economic decision on the masses to prove itself. You get the idea? Come on. Already the first part of it was courts, the second part of it was appointments and all of that, and now we are trying to look at re-election. There is no room for the masses. There is nothing to manage, basically. You cannot create a mess and claim you want to manage it. No. What we are in was well thought out on a desk, and it's being implemented that way. So it's not.
Well, we must find a way out of it. Nigerians, the future of Nigerians and the survival of Nigerians are at stake.
The Nigerians have the power And the power is basically when we hire you to fix our economy, when we hire you to do things, however you got in aside, when you are hired to fix things by the masses and you don't do it well, then you get sacked. Basically, that's the idea.
Which is
during
election.
Yes, it's a human problem. If it's humans that elect or not elect, then it's human to fix the economy or to ruin it.
So the argument, if we had Atiku steering the ship of Nigeria, for instance, if we had Atiku as a former vice president with all of that experience, is actually speaking as that those that are having a concern, if he had all of those ideas and ought to probably do better than what we are having from President Tinubu, who was a former governor of a state, who have also showed commitment to what he did in Lagos, the transformations and the economic structures of Lagos, and that he said, I asked for the job, so no one should pity me for the job. I know what to do. I've hired the best hands to do the previous jobs before when I was a governor, so I have what it takes to do it now as a president. Compared to Atiku Abubakar, people said, you are the vice president. What were you able to do as a vice president? Once you handled the economy of the nation, what change were you able to effect? So,
well, the question of how it would have been possibly if it was somebody like Atiku in power, I would just say it would not have been different with what the brigade of the APC were doing when the PDP were in power. They had solution to everything. They had better options to the economy. They had better policies that wouldn't impact the masses negatively or make them suffer. They had all the policies to increase our purchasing power as the masses and all of that. But once they got into power, basically everything changed. So in that regard, I'd say most of what you find with such politicians is, let's capitalize on, let us appeal to the sentiments of the masses. And once we do that, it begins and ends with getting into power, and that basically is it. That's all to it.
So the struggle is always a struggle for power.
Yes. And to be honest with you, you did mention earlier something about Atiku said, I don't know if it's in response to what the Secretary to the Federal Government said, Tinubu doesn't deserve
the second term.
The second term. It's rather unfortunate that anybody would have to be pleading with the Northerners to give Tinubu a second chance, as if we forgot what happened in 2023. How he got into power, who celebrated the most, who wanted him there. And all of a sudden, the same people are being pleaded with to do that. Now the question is, why would you want a man in power and then all of a sudden you are being pleaded with to give him a second chance? What did you expect from him in the first place?
Do you feel the North had played a greater role for President Tinubu?
Well, President Tinubu, I look at his presidency, not so much him as an individual. Okay? I look at the Muslim presidency that was played. The same thing that was played in 2015, was played in 2019, was played this time around, even in a bigger sense. And so the deliberations then, if you followed, it was a national thing. It was more of a matter of a demonstration of some form of religious dominance and all of that. A lot of people from the north, Muslims, Christians from the middle belt, from the south, saw certain things that we could look beyond these things. Let's look beyond these things and look at something better. But some people felt no. Especially with basically what happened in Kaduna. And then it was more like, okay, you see what happened here, we're going to replicate it on a national scale and all of that. So it's important to ask any northern politician or the elites, when you say he doesn't deserve a second term, what did you expect in the first term? What was that thing around the Muslim ticket that you expected, basically, from him? Was it the economy you wanted to get fixed? What exactly did you want, and what is he not doing? Because to play the devil's advocate, I will tell you, as far as Tinubu is concerned, he has satisfied 100% what the North wanted. Muslim ticket, and they got it. So what else do you want?
The questions of economy, because if the North are saying that the people in the North are really finding it very difficult to survive, that out of school children is increasing, insecurity, which you have an idea about the new, threats of insecurity in those regions. So it looks that attentions and underdevelopment is still very high within that region, and they were expecting that if we had Buhari from the North that was once the president, that those that are now asking the North, what was Buhari able to do? And if they have supported Tinubu and they are now looking at Tinubu from the South, they are not really speaking on the issues of religion again this time around, because it looks that they are now pushing the agenda of between the North and the South. So my question, the next question will be, looking at the struggle for North presidency and the Southern presidency, is it justifiable? Or do we still have to go back to the convention that you said?
It's just an unfortunate, something they call delusion of grandeur, where you just feel entitled to something you have demonstrated very poor management for. Let us look at education. When somebody says out of school children, this, who is responsible for that? Is it the politician from the Southwest that caused it in the North? Is it the politician from the Southeast that caused it in the North? Is it a politician from the Middle Belt that caused it in the North? Is it a politician from the South that made it so? Basically, the Southwest is as advanced in the aspect of economy, education, basically. This we grew up to know a lot of people, somewhat with the least number of out-of-school children. It's simply because they decided they wanted it that way. It wasn't any particular president that carved the country into certain groups and said, I will educate these people more on this. And a good example is Buhari was in power for 8 years. He ran the country basically like more of, say, a village cult leader, basically. When you talk about nepotism, when you talk about, so it was more or less, oh, he's from my village, okay, let him have that. Oh, he's from my village. So basically, he ran the country without nobody restrained him. And that's the reason why when people say, Tinubu did this, Tinubu did that, and all of that, I ask myself, basically, where was your reasoning when Buhari spent his 8 years? Whatever he did, as far as education is concerned, for the North, all put together in those 8 years, has not measured a tenth of what Goodluck did to the North with those hundreds of Almajiri schools, which we don't exactly know what state they are in as at now, because with that, you should not actually have any kid on the street. But when you choose to, when people tell you number of out-of-kid students, I see it as a weapon of manipulating presidents. So is it...
So for the real fact, they had opportunity to also do something about that.
There is every opportunity in every part of the country to educate children. You can't legislate culture. If where I'm from, I finish secondary school and I don't want to go to the university, I become an armed robber, and then the girl feels her best thing is to catch a room somewhere and be a prostitute. The government can't do anything about it. Whether they build 10 universities in every local government from where I come from, if I choose that this is how I want to be, there's nothing that could happen. We are not talking about orphans. We are talking about people that have fathers and mothers. But then you find them on the streets. Will the government force families to create values for themselves? Will the government force people to regulate the number of children they give birth to? Will the government force politicians to ensure that they don't have out-of-school children? Of course, there would always be out-of-school children. Not everybody will become. But in an average, why do you have to have kids less than 7 years old sleeping on the streets, sleeping in gutters, begging around the streets and all of that? And take a toll, possibly your TV station should do that around. You would discover that they are actually not orphans. So it's not exactly as if they lost their parents and then they didn't have relatives to take care of them. So it is a decision of some.
So it's not about the issue of the North should wait till 2031, so that they can also have their chance to participate in the presidential election.
So, like I said, even the question of 2031 is a certain unfounded sense of entitlement. Whoever says that power from the South when it leaves the south for 2 tenures must come back to the north. Or when it leaves the southwest must come back to the north. Who made that entitlement that a particular part of the country
for equity, fairness?
The power. Yeah,
I'm here on the altar of equity and fairness.
Talk about equity.
This is for time for the North, allow the North to remain. After 8 years, the North, and after 8 years, the South. It looks like they have been
so if that is equity and that is fairness, we are just 2 or 3 years into the renewed hope
of the South.
So, and if the man is not performing, what gives you the entitlement to feel power should return to you to fix it? It just left you. It has been with you for 8 years, and 8 years where nobody could criticize anybody. And that's why, to an extent, some commentators will tell you that if you switched the person of Tinubu and made him Shetima or another northern politician or whatsoever with worse economic policies, nobody will cough from this part of the country. And they may not be wrong to say that. Even I don't see them as wrong saying that, because we saw how it ran. So there is a whole lot of mix-up. And then, like I said, the mess is not something to pity the government for. It's not something the government is overwhelmed with. It is basically what the government is doing. Yeah, so
how do you judge the recent elections in Nigeria? Because there are those that are having a concern that because you said, power belongs to the people, and if the people has the capacity to hire you, the people should also have the capacity, to either renew the contract, renew the job, or make changes what they want through the power of elections and all of those voting. But our elections currently are still being a concern. Ghana just recently concluded the elections. That those I feel there was no announcement, but the ruling party who was losing an election had to concede defeat by extending some congratulations just ease the tense on that election. I talk about if the people, if this election is taken to 2027, and with the look ahead of things, while you somehow have some feelings that things may not go right. We've seen high cases of vote buying, so people said that many people are hungry. So if the people in the cities are voting based on ideology, if people in the cities are voting based on policy driven of the political party or the candidacy, that those in the rural areas are only after what they will eat because the hunger is becoming real in this region. How do you manage all of those pressures and interest?
First of all, that in the second year of anybody's first tenure, because it looks as if there has to be 2 tenures, already we are politicking for what would happen in 3 years to come. Obviously, unless we want to pretend, nothing positive is coming out of it. Because the whole of what's happening now is basically, one, let us secure a second tenure on one camp. The other camp is, let's remove him, let's capitalize on these weaknesses and take him out. And that's why I said it's as if, as far as our political elites are concerned, it all begins and ends with grabbing power. And once it is grabbed, what do we do with it? We spend the first half fighting those who are not okay with it. We spend the second half possibly stealing money and preparing to get another tenure, or possibly raising boys that will not allow financial crimes or issues to come after us. So I'm one of those who are not very optimistic about 2027. The reason is that, of course, it's good to be patriotic. I'm a patriotic Nigerian, okay?
You believe in the country. You want the country to work.
Yes, it will work. But at the same time, I cannot be patriotic while pretending to be blind to what's happening. You see how elections went. Wherever the dominant party is, it is 100% victory. Okay? We know it doesn't happen that way. It doesn't happen that way. So
it's not the choice of the people.
So in Nigeria, yes, it should have been the choice of the people to hire and fire. But that's not it. That there's a conversation of 2 tenures here, north and south. It begins and ends at a certain level. So the masses are mocked with basically what we do at the polling units. At the end of the day, of course, there are people who are there because people voted them. But most cases, especially what determines the number one office in the country, I do not think we should be so optimistic about it, but we should be realistic about it. So that may get us more awakened and more determined to make sure something good comes out of it.
If all of that, looking at the wave, the passion of many Nigerians for 2023 election, you are aware of how people, felt, this is what we really wanted. And at the end of the day, the elections ended where it ended with a winner of President Tinubu. There are still those that are, there's still a division of many Nigerians in respect to that. Those that feel, because if you look at the statistics of how this president won, it's a less compared to every other president winning at a presidential election. So it means that it was a very hard competition. People, had stood in for this. People had already, had their support for this other candidate. Do you feel that why people are not seeing any good thing coming from this government or this administration is on the grounds of the justification of the fact that they never believed in the government from the onset? They never believe on the presidency. They never believe on the ticketing of the Muslim ticket and all of that. That's the reason why it looks that this government is highly criticized. No one sees to see that. The reform that the government are taking, they've said that it's a hard decision that they had to take, but it's necessary for our future, the country's future. What do you feel is the point?
One, yes, this present government started off with the issue of legitimacy. There has never been any electoral process, electioneering period, election that has been obviously compromised and flawed like this particular one.
We can say that the Supreme Court has given a judgment on that.
Yes, basically. So that which
I concluded all of them.
Which there is an activist that is currently facing charges because of a lot of the things he wrote about how compromised the judicial system is, even though that's not the subject. But
you feel like judiciary is making things worse?
Yes. So you try to wonder, these arms of government, when last actually did they function as independent? When last did they function as independent? Even the security structure. So, like I said, it started off with on the ground of there was a lot of legitimacy issue. It wasn't popular. You needed to be on the streets when the announcements were made. There should have been some celebrations, but there wasn't. I know that.
I agree.
I know that. So it wasn't a welcome thing, neither in the heart nor in the spirit of Nigerians. But whatever the case may be, like I said, there is a small percentage that are okay with a lot of things. With regards to the policies, it is a lie. The decisions were never tough. The decisions were never necessary. If they were tough, if they were hard, they may not have been taken, or they may have been taken after carefully thinking and putting the right things in place. Okay? So you just don't sit down and shove down evil out of the throat of people and tell them it's a difficult situation. To who is it difficult? You would have told me it's difficult if a senator was earning just 1.7 million or 2 million naira as against 30, 40 or 50. Then you will tell me you've taken a tough decision. It would have been a tough decision if you scraped one of those chambers. So you don't have about how many people in the House
over
of
360
in the House of Reps collecting tens of millions at the end of every month doing nothing. Okay? So that will be a tough decision. It will be a tough decision if people who steal our crude oil, we start finding them in jail. It will be a tough decision if those who sabotaged our refineries go to jail and they begin to function in 3 months and everybody sits up. Then you call it a tough decision. But any decision that pushes the consequences 100% on Nigeria's masses is not tough, is not necessary, is sheer wickedness. And I did mention something here about African leaders, puppet leaders, where most of these policies might not necessarily be originating from their so-called kitchen cabinets. There are people that believe they have the sole responsibility, they have a better understanding of what our resources should do for them than ourselves. So and those, that's basically where I think the major problem is coming from. People who don't have a mind of their own. Because I would feel no matter how wicked and ruthless you are, you would at least love the masses. You can't just be wicked to them. You will be wicked to them selfishly. But what does it benefit them?
So you feel that this government is not making sacrifices enough? The National Assembly, the House of Reps the other time had to declare the support of, part of their salaries, a percentage from the salaries, just to be able to give back to the people. They've also said, issues of vehicles is to help them for oversight function. That is the reason why they have vehicles. And their salaries are not enough. Constituents are calling them for, constituency support projects and all of that. They have given a lot of explanation beyond how much they earned. Even the president had said, I have to cut down costs of people traveling, for foreign trips. I've also have to reduce,
which he didn't,
and all of that. So, in a more concern, justifying the sacrifices they have made by this government.
Well, when you say sacrifices, that's why I said you can only tell me as a president that you've taken a tough decision when a senator does not collect more than 2.5 million at the end of every month.
But they have had bills. They said they are paying the services of the constituent.
So, but
the people of their senator,
the reason is because our minds have been twisted. Who basically sends a senator to the Senate to go and be doing constituency projects? He is in the Senate so that when somebody wakes up in the morning, like someone that took alcohol and says what was 160 and people suffered to do that, and he almost multiplies it 10 times. So the senator will tell you, no, you cannot do this. Okay? This is not how it happens. They are supposed to stop such things from happening. They are supposed to represent the people. But because our minds have been battered to just look for, we've been impoverished. Our souls, our minds have been so starved that all we look at is give me, give me, give me. So he drives into the village with a big car, and then you see either mobile police officers or military and all of them, and they say senator is in town. So basically, you get some rice, you get 10,000, you get 5,000, and then those with children who are graduates will give him their CVs, and then he may dash them money and they will go back home. That's not what a senator should do. That's not what they do in the US. That's not what those in Congress do in the UK. That's not what they do.
Are the people not doing, are Nigerians not pushing them to do all of that?
Nigerians are not pushing them to do all of that. Their clique or their cult of elites have taught Nigerians to be beggars. And that is why you have certain parts of the country where I would rather beg than go to school. You have certain parts of the country where victory or achievement means I have my own in politics. So steal the money and let's enjoy it and wait for another turn to come. That basically is it. Otherwise, why don't you legislate policies that will empower? You legislate policies to empower people, not take money and dash them peanuts and all of that. If I had a group of 10 people who are able-bodied, I will point them to a farm. I will get some to have barbing salons and all of that. I won't have them in my house in the morning, then I share tea and bread for them. And I tell them, this is 20% of my salary just for your breakfast. And then I go to another place. This is 50% of my salary just for you to go to Jerusalem or Mecca and do all of that. That's not sacrifice. That's just nonsense. Yes.
Who do we blame the state of opposition? Because those are fused. Oppositions are not opposition in Nigeria. The role of opposition is to engage the ruling party, looking at their policies and all of those concerned that they have slipped over on their duties to constructively engage the government of the day. Labour Party is in crisis, PDP is in crisis.
They haven't actually slept over. opposition in Nigeria simply means capitalize on the weakness of your opponent so that you win the next election. That basically is how we define opposition in Nigeria. If there was an opposition in Nigeria, I can assure you, to begin with, we may remove subsidy, if at all it existed, but it will not be like this. Our Naira will not be on a free fall. And I've often told people, our political elites, our traditional fathers, our elder statesmen, if they meant well for the masses, the country will not be comfortable with the price of PMS. The country will not be comfortable with a lot of the things that have been happening. But you are able to sell to a poor man something that was X amount at X times 10, and everything is okay. You are able to, whatever happened to, the electricity tariff, it has successfully happened. You are able to, possibly if a little child stands by your car and does like this with his finger, you import another one. You place an order for a customized one because something happened to this one. If all of these things sit well, that's the reason why I keep wondering, why are people arguing about the tax reform bill? If all of this evil have come and have settled down and we keyed into it, we welcomed it, and we are living like that, enduring it, why are we suddenly having a problem with tax reform bill, no matter whether it's positively going to impact us or negatively? Why do we just pick on fights that are fake, lies, and all of that? So it's more or less, when you find people supporting a certain policy, it's because something has entered their pockets, or there is a bright future there for them. Nobody basically asks, what does this have for the Nigerians? Because the whole concept of leadership is to serve the masses. And I can assure you, for a decade, Nigerians have not seen that.
So the current opposition does not have the capacity engaging the government of the day in respect to what is going on, and even wrestling power with them for 2027. Do they lack the capacity?
At least not on a single policy would I claim, or would I say to you, the opposition has done anything. I told you, the litmus test that this government, like the previous one, can get away with anything was the manner in which subsidy was removed. And each time I say that, I will always say, if at all there was any such thing as subsidy, because the criminality in that sector is such that possibly it might take God's revelation to make Nigerians understand. It doesn't make any sense. But if that started off and the opposition, everybody was quiet, complained, and then the masses were forced to get it. Every policy, 100% is heavily paid for by the masses in Nigeria. And that's why whenever somebody says we need to take tough decisions that are necessary, they are not tough decisions that are necessary. They are decisions or alternatives to steal more money. Basically, we have overborrowed, and have done nothing with it. And the next option that is left is to sap the blood from the veins of masses. And that basically is what's happening now.
So how would you describe the continuous aspiration of Atiku? Because it looks at PDP on the other hand and saying the part of the problem they are having within the party is that the aspiration of Atiku is robbing them the opportunity of getting back to the Aso Rock. They have described the last election to be the fact that it looks at his interest to still be on the ballot. Was what has destroyed PDP today. Wike serving the current government of APC and still being a member of PDP, and all of those these are the factors that are weakening, the oppositions in Nigeria. And there are those that feel, Judge Akume, when he was making this assertion, said even at 90 years, that Atiku you can still contest to be the president of Nigeria. How would you describe his continuous aspiration?
I think it's reflective of most politicians on the African continent, and especially Nigeria, where you cannot separate ethnic and religious fanaticism or bigotry or sentiments from our politics, that the ambition of an individual to become president ends at becoming president. It's not because I have this or that for the country. It's more I have nursed this ambition and I must fulfill it. That was what got Buhari into power. That was what got Tinubu into power. And that is the reason why they don't have anything for the masses. If it is fueled by love for the masses, it would go differently. But when at some point it looks as if my aspiration, that is, what is the end in the aspiration? I want to be Mr. President. That is typical for most African rulers. And the end of it is the power, which first is exercised in enrichment, and then secondly, how you bruise anybody that tends to stand in your way. And that basically has been the story.
This agitation from the southeast, because Peter Obi coming from the southeast, they were having a concern. 2023 would have been an opportunity if PDP had given southeast a ticket, or even the APC would have considered the people of southeast for the presidency. Do you feel that Nigeria is still ready for that conversation about southeast presidency?
Well, I would say yes, if the North is always feeling power return to us, and say possibly with that notion of population and whatsoever. I've always asked, actually, I'm not from the southeast, but who is more populous than the Igbos? I happen to shake hands with more of them in the market. I happen to meet more of them in buses. I happen to meet more of them in school. When I say Igbo, I'm talking about Igbo. I'm not just talking about somebody who speaks the language. When I look at the entrepreneurial spirit, I see them. Whether the ones that have the bad, make the bad name or the good name. When I look at education and a whole lot of other things. So the Southeasterners are as entitled as anybody from the part of the country to become president. One of the reasons that why I said when people talk about it is our turn, it is our turn. I saw how people went all out, basically, criticizing and condemning anything Southeast. How they labeled the candidate, how they called him this, how they called him that, and all of that. Unfortunately, the Southeast has thrived and has produced people who seem to be most independent from the government. And that is the reason why some people are thinking, perhaps if these people are like this by default, why not give them a shot at the presidency? Okay? And somebody just has a problem with that. People feel it may mean the end of something. And frankly speaking, I think that would only be the option Nigerians haven't tried yet.
The Southeastern presidency.
Yes.
Thanks so much. A lot have been said concerning the presidency of 2027. And just Atiku Abubakar replying to Akume, Akume asking that the North should continue to support President Tinubu beyond now to 2027. And if the North, yes, and the North can reconsider a presidency for 2031, and sparked a lot of concern. And Zahir Yusuf is a public affairs analyst and a political commentator, was expressing that concern and about what it means. But the bottom line is the fact that there's a need to address the current socio-economic challenges and problems in Nigeria. If that is not fixed, the concern and conversation about 2027 can never get started. That's what many have shared. Thanks so much, Yusuf, for joining us. We do hope to have you again on the show. All right, that's everyone. That's what we wrap it up tonight on the show. We'll keep on tracking what it means the stakeholders are concerned about the presidency in addressing all of the challenges, the indicators of the economy, and what it means for us to have our policy of floating the naira, removing subsidy, and now that we have the protocol refinery, what is happening to the prices of the PMS is still a major concern for everyone. We'll track that development and brings you on a subsequent program. I am Dick and Michael. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. See you again.